Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. Today we're taking a look at a knife by TunaFire. This is the third TunaFire knife that I'm reviewing. I did a folding knife, I did a fixed blade, and now we're doing this folding knife. If you want to take a close look at it, we've got sort of a long clip point, kind of like an extended Bowie style blade. The handle scales are Micarta. I think it comes in, it's at least two, I think it's 3 colors. It's a liner lock, stonewash job on there. They say that it's a D2 steel. The TunaFire fixed blade that has D2 steel performed very well, and I did the testing for the video, and then I did after testing, and I really liked it. We don't know for sure if it's D2 steel because we haven't had any TunaFires tested. Lee over at Love Them Knives channel has a lot of knives tested in the United States to see if the composition of the steel is what they say it is, and to test how hard that they've made that steel. But this is an interesting knife. We've got a deep pocket clip, we've got little accent pivot collars, and it's got decent action. If you want to hear all the details and see all the goods, I do a full review, which means I include a teardown. So if you see my reviews, they almost always include a teardown. I try to get it all done in 20 minutes. It's a bit of a lot of information to get through because I try to go in depth. Let's get to the tabletop. I only let YouTube interrupt the video once, and we're going to take a good long, deep look at this knife. All right, here it is. Let's start with our size comparison with the Ontario Rat 1. That's the biggest rat. It's definitely a smaller knife in every way. It might not be that much thinner though, but it's pretty much a smaller knife. It's shorter. It's got a lot of cutting edge, but not big size. This knife, it fits just barely into my hand. And I use men's extra large gloves most of the time. Sometimes I use large. So I'm right at that transition between large and extra large in North American men's hand sizes. So if your hands are extra large, this might not be for you. But if you've got large and medium sized hands, maybe even small hands, this knife might be a very good choice for you in terms of the hand feel, grip and everything. The micarta is fairly polished, but there's still some texture to it. And when I made it wet, it didn't get super slippery, but it's not as grippy as some micartas that are out there. It's more on the slicker side of average. The blade shape, there you go. There's the blade shape. Let's bring it a little closer to the camera. You've got the straight back, and then you got a clip with a swedge on it. And then you've got your belly here, a very pointy tip. We've got a small sharpness choil, not quite big enough, to be honest with you. You can see that they sharpen just ever so slightly, almost up into the plunge. They came very close. When it comes time for me to sharpen this knife, it's going to be hard not to run into the plunge and make that section look messy. I wish the choil was a little bit bigger. The branding on the knife, you've got D2 right there on the blade. It's not too big. Well, it is too big. I wish it was smaller, but it's not super dark, so that's okay. And on this side, we've got TunaFire with those thin lines on the name. So that's not bad. I don't really mind. On this stonewash, it almost disappears sometimes. The blade is getting thinner, starting right about there. That's about halfway down the blade. And so then it's got that taper going down to a fairly fine tip. So this is not a strong tipped knife. The flipper, it's entirely smooth all over. There's no jimping on it. But it's got enough height that it just always works. You get your finger in that region and it's just going to work. So I don't mind that there's not jimping on there, but I think I would like it if it was just a little bit shorter and they added a little bit of jimping, but it's far from terrible. That's a pretty good flipper tab. Lockup, it's exactly what I like on a brand new knife, so that's good. no blade, well, actually a tiny bit of blade play side to side. Look at my notes. Yes, there's a tiny bit of blade play from the factory, and using it, it wasn't bothersome at all. I'm going to now adjust it for the first time. It's a free spinning pivot. It's just turning along in there. So I don't like that because there's nothing on this side to grab onto. So I got it a bit tighter now though. And yeah, now it doesn't run as freely, but the blade play's gone. And now, yeah, it just stops wherever I put it. It's not drop shutty, for those of you who like that term. Loosened it up just a little bit. Yeah, okay, that's better. The blade play's gone, and it's not super smooth now, but it's fairly smooth. Like I can make it shut just by shaking it, so like holding the pivot just. So it's not terrible. That's pretty good. There are ball bearings in here. I'll take it apart and show you those later on. As I said, alignment, pretty good. It's pretty much down the middle. That's nice. The liners are exposed all the way around, and the micarta is rounded on the edges, and then with the liners being rounded all over, it's quite comfortable on hand, no hot spots. There's no jimping anywhere except for on the lock release. There's not a big cutaway, so you need that jimping on top to get some texture for your thumb to grab it. It works quite well. I like that jimping. It's functional. It works. We've got a backspacer, probably made a G10 as well. We've got a lanyard hole in a very dumb spot, if you ask me. I don't like that lanyard placement, that lanyard hole placement at all, especially being a little bit smaller. I hold the knife like this, and where's the paracord going? It's going into the flesh of the hand right here. Thankfully, paracord's not hard. You know, it's cordage, it's soft. But I would much rather that the paracord hole was further back, but then they'd have to change where the pocket clip is. We've got a deep carry pocket clip. They've got button screws on there. It's a little bit tight in there. The tip of the clip is flattened out, so that's good. Let's show it going into a pocket. It climbs over right away, and it works. On these pants, they're not terribly thick. And when I was using it, in some of my jeans, it's sometimes hung up on those button screws, but usually not a problem at all. So if you've got heavier denim, this knife might hang right there on the, when you're putting it into your pocket with those button screws. So once it's in there, it's holding quite well. It's a reasonable pocket clip. I just wish they would have used some flush screws. The seat for the clip is has the micarta milled away, so they didn't do anything on the show side for the pocket clip, so it's a right side only clip. That's the general overview of what we've got. So I'll do the measurements later. I'm going to take it apart now and show you the insides. I decided I'm going to show you how hard it is to take this apart, and I'm going to see how hard it is. Oh, I got it. There we go. So although it's a free spinning pivot, it wasn't too hard to get that pivot screw off. The rest of it I'm not going to show you, but I am going to test on camera how much play there is in these screws. There's a fair bit of play in these screws. And I'm going to find out how hard they are as well. Okay, there's no Loctite on these other screws. There's a little bit of residue of something on the pivot screw, but not a lot. Wasn't hard to defeat. You can see all the skeletonizing in these liners. That's quite a lot. They decided to do one stamping that they could use for both sides and then just add the liner lock on the other side. That saves them most of their stamping. They could do a single stamp to get it like this, and then they just add half of them to make the liner lock on them. Not a bad way to do it. Ball bearings are steel in a bronze cage. They're very small. I think because of how small it is this way, that's why there was a little bit of wobble. Even after I tightened it up, there's a tiny bit of, I wouldn't call it play, but there was a little bit of wobble when I had it loose enough that I could still shut the knife easily. You can see some residue from some lubrication in there. Pretty good captured stop pin and the trace, the hole that it's from. We've got these aluminum pivot collars that have been anodized orange. This one's already got some chipping on it right on the edge right there. But all in all, not terrible. Could be worse. For the price, it's actually pretty good. I didn't tell you the price yet on this thing. The cheapest price I can find at AliExpress, $18.66 American for this knife. A number of stores has this, all the way up to $25. So I'll give links for a bunch of different places down below. Don't forget to check the consumer satisfaction rating. AliExpress has a little percentage rating, 95, 97, 98. So the more people complain, the lower that number is. So you want to buy from a store that's got a high number in the high 90s. All right, I'm going to clean it up a little bit, relubricate. You could use it without the backspacer. I'll show you a picture of the inside. The pins have shoulders on them, so it'll go together just fine if you like clean shank pins at the back instead of a backspacer. So you've got that option. I've taken the backspacer out, and this is how it looks without the backspacer. There you go. So if you like that better, you can have that. I haven't spoken yet about the cutting tasks, how well it performs. Well, with this tip, it's pretty good for doing some precise stuff. So you can hold it sort of like a pen. Be careful with this finger on the side, because then you slide it, you're going to cut yourself. But if you're very careful, you can use it like this and to do really delicate things with the tip, because it's a very fine tip. A very shallow grind angle on this on both sides, so it slices fairly well. It didn't come super sharp from the factory, a little bit below average, but it did a pretty good job with my cut tests. So, there's that. Oh, by the way, I do all kinds of cut tests. I cut all kinds of stuff, and I do, edge durability, and I just don't show all my cut tests. I haven't mentioned it in a while. I've got a whole video about why I do not show cut tests. I'll leave a link for it right up here in the corner, and I'll leave it down below in the video description and even in the comments to make it easy for you guys to find it. Now let's go over all of the dimensions, sizes, specs, and stuff. 89 grams, 3.1 ounces. If there was more skeletonizing on that outside liner, then the balance point would be a little bit closer to the pivot where I like it, but it's not bad because it's only 3.1 ounces. Factory sharpness, 175 bests. That's how much pressure it takes to cut through some filament. The less is better. Average from what I review is about 140, so it's a little bit below average. Worse than average, I should say. The length of the cutting edge, 80.7 millimeters, 3.18 inches. Blade length tipped to the closest spot on the liner since they're more exposed, 80.2 millimeters, 3.16 inches. The thickness of the blade, 3.12 millimeters, that's 0.123, so just a tiniest bit below 1/8 of an inch. The blade depth, the widest area is right here where the clip point starts, 23.3 millimeters, 0.92 of an inch. How thick is it behind the grind? And I usually measure it right about in the third of the way down the blade where we do most of our cutting. 0.51 millimeters, 20 thousandths of an inch on the nose. That's okay. It's only going to get thicker every single time we sharpen this knife. The grind angles. Well, the averages are pretty good. The average on this side's 15.5. The average on this side's 15.9. But what we get here is actually at the heel, it's 16.7, and then 15.5 halfway along, and then 14.3 at the tip. And on this side, we start at 15.1, 13.8, and then 18.9 at the tip. So that's a fair bit of variability. But I would sharpen this to about 18 degrees per side. The handle length now, since the liners are exposed, the liner length is 114.2 millimeters, 4.5 inches. The grip area, it's right around 9 centimeters, about 3.5 inches. That's measured, between my thumbnails there, so not counting this section back here. So you could get your pinky back here if you want to, but there you go. The thickness of the handle, 14.2 millimeters, 0.559 of an inch. So it's not super thin. You can get a pretty good grip on this. The handle depth within the grip area, the widest point is right there, 21.9 millimeters, 0.86 of an inch. When the knife is closed, the widest point is here at the flipper, 31.1 millimeters, 1.22 inches, making the entire total length when the blade's deployed 194.5 millimeters, 7.66 inches. And since I already talked about the price before, there you go. I'll leave links for them down below. Referral links, which help to fund this channel. So thank you so much for using my referral links when you go shopping. So what do I think of this knife? I think it's pretty well done. If they would have done a pivot pin that does not spin, I would give this thing an unreserved recommendation. Right now, that pivot pin can become a problem. So, not that great. I do wish the edge was a tiny bit thinner. It's not bad. It just doesn't leave room for, a lot of maintenance before it starts getting too thick behind the grind. I wouldn't mind a left pocket clip, but the pocket clip is pretty good. I'd prefer that there wasn't button screws on the body and on the pocket clip. I'd like something nicer. But when you can get this thing at $18.66 American with free shipping, at least to the United States, that's not bad at all. Most knife stores on AliExpress will not ship to Canada because of Canadians know CBSA confiscates knives, and then consumers demand their money back from the seller, and the seller goes, "It's not my fault, so I'm just going to stop selling to Canadians," and that's why. But the knife itself, it's pretty good. I like the design, the general shape and everything. I like the stonewash on here. It's my favorite stonewash, is my favorite finish. Feels good, looks good. I don't use lanyards much, so the hole placement doesn't really bother me. I do like that the back spacer can be removed if you want to. Oh, I forgot to reiterate the sharpener's choil. I wish it was just a little bit bigger. I've got a way of doing that at home, but then it becomes clear that it's been modified because I can't stonewash it again afterwards. So there you go. This is one of the newer knives by TunaFire. I've realized that TunaFire is not a brand new company. They didn't start with these Micarta knives. They've had other knives. They've done some OEM knives. That's knives that you can find on a number of different brand names, but it's really the same knife. So they started out doing that kind of thing. I do like that they are doing this series here, this GT series, and the other knives that have this micarta and this kind of look to them start with GT, so I'm sure this one does too. If you're looking for a knife like this and you don't mind the weight for shipping from China, there you go. If I find it on Amazon, I'll put the links down below as well. Thanks for watching my video. Thanks for helping the channel. If you're a Patreon supporter or a YouTube member, I appreciate you very much. If you want to join up, patreon.com/CCE, or click join just below the video right beside the subscribe button, and you'll get some good benefits. A free knife, a draw for a free knife every single month for my supporters, and you get early access to all the knife sales that I do as well. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb.